Most men believe they want freedom. They speak of it, they dream of it, they write songs and poems about it. But Dostoevsky saw through this illusion with terrifying clarity. He said that when given the chance to be truly free, most men recoil in horror. They don't want the weight of their own choices, the abyss of responsibility, the cold winds of a life without masters. No, what men crave is the comfort of chains, the security of being told what to do, the sweet relief of surrendering their will to something larger, something that excuses them from the agony of decision. Think about this. Why is it that when a man is finally freed from one prison, he rushes headlong into another? He escapes tyranny, only to enslave himself to wealth. He leaves religion, only to worship ideology. He fights against authority, only to bow before public opinion. Dostoevsky's words cut like a knife because they reveal a secret we try desperately to avoid. Freedom is unbearable. It demands too much. And so most men choose slavery, silently, willingly, even gratefully. This is not just a 19th century observation. Look around today. Men drowning in endless distractions, hypnotized by screens, paralyzed by fear of rejection, begging for validation, obeying invisible masters they cannot even name. Dostoevsky wasn't describing some ancient past. He was describing you. He was describing me. He was describing every man who has ever trembled at the thought of standing truly alone, naked before life, forced to answer the terrible question, what will you do with your freedom? And the answer, more often than not, is slavery. Freedom. The word itself sounds glorious, almost divine. Men march for it, kill for it, and die for it. But Dostoevsky, with his relentless psychological insight, argued that freedom is the most unbearable burden the human soul can carry. Because freedom is not simply the ability to do as you please. Real freedom means responsibility. Total, terrifying responsibility for your life, your choices, your soul. And the truth, he believed, is that most men do not want this weight. They would rather be given orders, fed promises, and relieved of the crushing responsibility of being free. Dostoevsky was not speaking as an armchair philosopher spinning abstract theories. He was a man who had looked into the abyss. Condemned to death in his youth, he stood before a firing squad, believing he had only moments to live. At the last instant, his sentence was commuted, and he was sent instead to years of brutal labor in Siberia. Few men have tasted life's extremes, the certainty of death, followed by the raw struggle of survival in the harshest conditions. And it was from this crucible that he emerged with insights into the human soul so haunting that they still burn today. His writings, especially in the Brothers Karamazov and the Grand Inquisitor, strike at the very heart of our illusions. In that parable, Dostoevsky imagines Christ returning to earth during the Spanish Inquisition. Instead of rejoicing, the Inquisitor throws him in prison, telling him humanity doesn't need freedom. What people need is bread, miracles, and authority. Give men freedom, and they will collapse under its weight. Give them chains, and they will kiss the hand that binds them. Dostoevsky's genius was not simply in pointing out the hypocrisy of institutions, but in revealing the psychology of every individual. Why is it that men prefer slavery? Because freedom is terrifyingly uncertain. In freedom, you are naked before reality. No excuses, no masters to blame. Every failure, every regret, every wasted year is on your shoulders alone. Most men cannot face that. And so they escape into structures, jobs that dictate their worth, ideologies that dictate their morals, relationships that dictate their identity. These become cages, but cages that feel safe. Think of the modern man. He tells himself he is free because no tyrant holds a whip over him. Yet he cannot go a day without checking his phone, without scrolling endlessly, without bending his mind to the algorithms that keep him docile. He is not commanded by kings, but by dopamine. Not enslaved by priests, but by influencers and corporations who shape his desires more completely than any religion ever could. Dostoevsky would look at this world and say, "You see, nothing has changed. Man does not want freedom. He wants to be ruled. But why? Why is freedom such a torment? It is because freedom confronts you with the abyss of possibility. With freedom, you could become anything, and therefore you must answer why you remain as you are. Freedom forces you to face your cowardice, your wasted potential, your quiet betrayals of yourself. To be free is to wake up every day with the unbearable truth that your life is entirely your responsibility. There is no God, no government, no partner, no parent who can carry that burden for you. And if you fail, if you rot in mediocrity, if you drown in despair, it was your choice. Slavery, by contrast, is merciful. In slavery, you are absolved. You can say, "It was not me. It was my boss, my wife, my government, my society." Slavery removes the agony of responsibility. It gives you someone to blame, and in that scapegoat, you find relief. Dostoevsky saw that most men will gladly trade freedom for certainty, trade dignity for comfort, trade their soul for the illusion of safety. Consider how often men choose the predictable over the unknown. They stay in jobs they hate because the salary is stable. They stay in relationships that suffocate them because loneliness is too frightening. They obey trends, not because they believe in them, but because standing apart feels unbearable. All of these are chains, chosen chains, voluntary servitude. And once chosen, men convince themselves it is inevitable. They call it reality or duty or the way things are. In truth, it is slavery disguised as wisdom. Dostoevsky knew the cost of freedom because he lived it. Exiled in Siberia, stripped of status, possessions, and comfort, he could have surrendered to despair. Instead, he realized that true freedom exists only when everything else is taken away, when nothing shields you from the raw responsibility of living. He saw that the human instinct is to run from this exposure, to hide behind authority, ideology, or habit. But those who endure it, who face freedom without retreat, discover something almost divine, the ability to stand alone without excuses and live as a fully responsible being. This is why his work feels so threatening even today. Because when you read Dostoevsky, you cannot simply nod and admire his prose. You are forced to look inward and ask, what are the chains I've chosen? Where am I pretending to be powerless, simply because freedom frightens me? His message is not comfortable. It does not flatter. It pierces. And if you dare to face it honestly, you will realize that your life is not dictated by others. You are your own jailer. You are your own master. This is Dostoevsky's cruel gift. He takes away every excuse. He tells you that the freedom you say you want is already here. But you reject it every day, preferring slavery dressed up as security. And until you admit this truth, you will remain enslaved, not by tyrants, but by your own fear. Look around you. Freedom is worshipped in speeches, celebrated in slogans, but lived by almost no one. The irony of the modern age is that men are surrounded by more freedom than ever, yet remain more enslaved than perhaps any generation before them. The chains are invisible now, woven into culture, relationships, technology, and even self-perception. This is exactly the world Dostoevsky foresaw, a world where men would willingly surrender their freedom for the comfort of being told what to do. Take relationships. Every man says he wants love, intimacy, connection. But love demands responsibility. Real love is freedom, because it requires you to bring your whole self, unmasked, vulnerable, accountable. That level of exposure terrifies most men, and so they retreat into dependency. They want a partner who defines them, who validates them, who tells them who they are. They confuse attachment with love, routine with devotion, and obedience with intimacy. It feels safe, but it is slavery. A man who cannot stand alone in freedom will never stand strong in love. Dostoevsky would say that women do not fear male freedom. They fear male weakness disguised as freedom. A man who is enslaved to his comfort, his fears, his unacknowledged chains, cannot love freely. He clings, he controls, he demands. And deep down, she knows this is not strength. This is dependency in disguise. It is the coward's version of love. True freedom terrifies not because it dominates, but because it stands unshaken. And only that kind of man can command respect. Shift now to society. Every man tells himself he is free because he can vote, choose his career, post his opinions online. But Dostoevsky would laugh. He would say, "You are slaves to the very systems that claim to liberate you. You obey trends dictated by corporations. You let algorithms decide what you see, what you think, what you desire. You call it freedom because you swipe the screen yourself, but the choices were manufactured long before you ever touched the phone. This is not freedom. This is slavery made palatable. Consider how men are pacified today. Bread and circuses, the Roman formula. Endless entertainment, cheap dopamine, distractions to keep you docile. Netflix, pornography, video games, social media. Each promises escape, Each demands nothing of you. Each takes your attention and your willpower and gives you the illusion of freedom. But Dostoevsky would call it what it is: chains. Chains you slip on yourself every night. Chains you even defend when someone tries to pull you away. Because to let go of them means to face silence, solitude, and the abyss of your own life. And that abyss terrifies you. This is why men remain weak in a world of opportunity. Every avenue is open. You can start a business, change countries, build your body, reinvent your mind. The door to freedom is wide open, but stepping through requires sacrifice. It requires the acceptance that if you fail, no one is to blame but you. So most men never step through. They stay in their routines, they stay in their distractions, they stay in the prisons they built. And when life slips away, they comfort themselves with excuses. It wasn't my fault. I had no choice. It was society. It was the system. Excuses, the last defense of the slave. But Dostoevsky's words cut through even today. He forces you to see that slavery is not imposed, it is chosen. And the most terrifying truth is this: modern men love their chains. They decorate them. They call them careers, relationships, traditions, hobbies. They cling to them because chains provide identity, and without chains, they would be nothing but a trembling soul staring into infinity. Personal growth is perhaps where his insight strikes the deepest. Everyone talks about self-improvement today: books, podcasts, coaches, gurus. Yet very few actually grow. Why? Because real growth requires freedom. And freedom requires responsibility. To take responsibility means admitting that your failures are yours, that your weaknesses are yours, that your lack of discipline, your wasted time, your unfulfilled potential is not because life was unfair, but because you chose slavery over freedom. Most men don't want that truth. They prefer to buy the next productivity hack, the next motivational video, the next spiritual trend, anything that gives them the illusion of change without the burden of actual freedom. Dostoevsky would look at this and shake his head, because until a man is willing to carry the weight of his own freedom, no external system can save him. You can follow routines, affirmations, philosophies, but if you do not claim responsibility for your existence, you remain a slave dressed as a seeker. This is why freedom feels so rare in our time. Not because the systems are too powerful, but because men have no stomach for it. Freedom means standing naked before the world with no shield but your own will. Freedom means knowing that if you waste your life, it is you who dug the grave. Freedom means saying yes to suffering, yes to risk, yes to the terrifying vastness of possibility, and very few men will ever choose that. The modern application of Dostoevsky's insight is brutal. If you want to know whether you are free, look at where you hide. Look at the chains you defend. Look at the excuses you cling to. Your life already reveals your answer. Dostoevsky did not offer comfort. He did not soothe the weak. His writings were jagged edges meant to cut away illusions until only the raw truth remained. And if there is one truth that echoes through his work, it is this: most men choose slavery. They hide from freedom because freedom is terrifying. But if you would rise above the herd, if you would live as more than a trembling slave, then you must engrave these lessons into your very blood. Never beg for freedom, claim it. No one will hand it to you. Not the state, not a woman, not society. They will only hand you chains and call them gifts. Freedom must be taken, and it is taken through responsibility. Do not fear suffering. To flee from suffering is to flee from freedom itself. Comfort is the most seductive master, but it leaves you hollow. Embrace suffering, and you will find that it is not an enemy but a forge. Stop blaming the world. The man who blames is already enslaved. He has given his power away, excused his weakness, and chained himself to circumstances. Say instead, "This is mine." Even if you did not create the problem, claim it. Because the moment you claim it, you gain the power to change it. Reject false masters. They come dressed in many forms: entertainment, ideology, money, even love. Anything that demands your submission while stripping away your responsibility is a master. Recognize them. Tear them down. Do not confuse chains with identity. A career, a relationship, a tradition, they are not who you are. They are tools, choices. The moment they define you, they own you. You are no longer free. Face the abyss. Freedom means staring into the void of possibility, the vastness of choice, and refusing to run. Most men collapse in terror. They beg for a master to tell them who they are. You must stand unflinching. Only there does freedom begin. Do not worship safety. Safety is the velvet glove of slavery. It whispers promises of protection, but its price is your will. Better to risk everything and stand free than to live long in chains. And perhaps the most brutal lesson of all, what you refuse to carry will bury you. If you avoid responsibility, if you dodge freedom, life will punish you with the very suffering you tried to escape. You will suffer either way, but the suffering of the slave is meaningless. The suffering of the free man is creation. Dostoevsky's wisdom is merciless, but it is also liberating. For if you accept it, you realize that freedom is not given, it is chosen. Slavery is not imposed, it is accepted. And at every moment of your life, you are deciding between the two. Dostoevsky never softened his message. He stared into the deepest corners of the human soul and reported back what he found, no matter how unbearable. And what he found was this: men cry out for freedom, but when it is placed in their hands, they tremble and throw it away. They rush back into the safety of chains, into the comfort of slavery, into the embrace of masters who will relieve them of the terrible burden of responsibility. This truth is not meant to depress you. It is meant to wake you, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin to recognize the chains you wear, the ones you thought were love or duty or success or progress. You see how willingly you bent your neck, how eagerly you surrendered the weight of your life to something outside yourself. And when you see it, you have a choice. You can keep living as most men do, decorating your chains, pretending they are freedom, dying with excuses on your lips. Or you can walk into the abyss of responsibility. You can take the unbearable weight of freedom on your shoulders and accept that there will be no excuses, no masters, no one to blame. Only you. Dostoevsky's lesson is merciless, but it is the only path to dignity. For freedom is not given, it is seized. It is not comfort, it is fire. And most men will always choose slavery because they cannot stand the flame. But you, if you are willing to suffer, if you are willing to stand naked before existence with nothing but your will, then you may discover what so few ever will, the terrible, beautiful truth that you are free. And once you claim that freedom, nothing and no one can enslave you again.